Hey, everybody, welcome to IMS Rethink Life. We are here today to talk about, is your vision clear or smudged? Might sound a little bit like a funny topic, but let me explain. So, the living of life is the discovery that there is no humanity apart from divinity. And man doesn't exist apart from the happenings that you call your world. Without the oceans, the people, the trees, the flowers, you name it, you would have no idea of the infinitude and variety of your individual conscious being without all of
You're asking me what that's all about?
that. No, you wouldn't have your own, you wouldn't have any sense of diversity if it wasn't for all of that, right? So,
Well, yeah, and that's just the language view we've got of diversity. It
right,
doesn't even begin to tap the resource.
exactly. Exactly. Well, just like our view is a view,
Yep.
it's only a little view of the reality that's present.
And the value of knowing that is that there's so much more present than I've been willing to see, that I have to develop a willingness to be present.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it. So when we say, is your vision clear or is it smudged? Well, I think that for the most part, we walk around with smudged vision a lot.
Yeah. And under the guise of intellectuality.
Okay. Say more about that intellectuality, like
Oh, well, we read
knowing,
these words and we intellectually can understand what the words are saying.
right?
We don't live them practically as a way of life. We live them as a theory that we can talk about, and aboutness goes nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And I want to say that, well, the metaphysician, the scientist, if you will, sees nothing outside of consciousness that's not happening inside as the unfoldment of truth, capital T and good, capital G. So we want to have our seeing, our vision with no duality, no mind apart from the events of daily life. That it's
Yep.
all one thing occurring in the best way we can see it, but it's a view that we see.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're looking at these words, you lose track of the fact that you're seeing yourself as an isolated individual, human being with limitations. So from the very beginning is where you need to step into freedom, which is only one thing going on. And this is the way it looks this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment, always changing. Whether you agree with it or not, it is always changing. So when you do not see that, you live in the past.
Right. And would you say that we're living with our hands firmly on the grips of expectation and all of that stuff?
Not
Or,
unless you are.
well, I mean, when if you say we're living in the past, we're hanging on to something.
Well, the minute you put a dot at the end of the sentence, it's the past. If you're living in something that was said in a book, you're living in the past. If you're living with the aha experience of what you're working with here, you're very present. But if you're living with the statement that came out of the book that said all is infinite mind and it's infinite manifestation, that's sort of an intellectual ho hum.
Unless in the saying of it, it returns you to the truth of the fact of it.
Yep. And you can always tell by what's going on in your life, whether you're living it or just talking it.
Okay. And so tell me more about that distinction. Describe the difference.
Well, if, when I go for my walks in the morning,
Yep.
I'm always reminded of that thing that I think Margaret told us about it in one of her seminars. She said Victor Young came to California and he stood on the shore and waved his arms out at the ocean and said, "Behold my beautiful body." Now he was consciously acknowledging the being of everything that exists as his beautiful body. How many times have you done that?
Not many.
Yeah. So I'm just saying,
But
we want to.
I wouldn't ask everybody who's a scientist to go out to the ocean and do that either. I mean, I get the presence that's there, the what he was viewing.
Yeah, I don't have to ask anybody. I have to be there.
That's correct.
If I'm there and I say, "Behold my beautiful body," I know what I'm saying.
Right. Or if anything occurs and you say, aha, that's the dress God's wearing today.
That's right. Same thing.
You know, where you're not getting hooked, where you're not hooked by,
no personal hook.
that's right, by what's showing up. Like, oh my God, what is that? Oh my God. Okay.
Do that or not today.
I've got to deal with this emergency, blah, blah, blah. And you know what I mean? Not that you won't be doing that, but it's like, where is cause? And I've been reading this book, or actually listening to the Audible, called 10x is easier than 2x. And it's fascinating because what it talks about is literally transforming who you know yourself to be.
Yeah.
And we all have our identity that we, you know, this ID label right here, and we know what we like and what we don't like, and, you know, our preferences and this and that, and we, you know, and all of it. And when you look at, well, what would be 10x rather than 2x? 2x is incremental change. 10x is transformational. It's like letting go of the past, literally, and stepping into the unknown, because you have a future, a vision that's bigger, that's calling you forth, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so but willing is a huge piece of this.
It's the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's always up to you. It's never up to circumstances or the surroundings or what you're doing or the fact that you didn't read your lesson this morning or any of that garbage.
Yeah.
It's the being that's present that you call Betty or Kim or whatever. Right. But it's the being that's present, that's infinite, unlimited, inexhaustible, perfect, whole, and ever present.
Right.
And when you're living with any of that going on as your conscious self-recognition, self-awareness, if you will,
yeah,
you walk on with great joy.
Yeah. Well, it's this thing that I think we've talked about before. It's like curiosity. There's this great quality of curiosity, and imagine anything that happens to you and the curiosity of, what's that?
Curiosity is the beginning of willingness.
Yeah. Like, what's opening up here? Isn't that fun? Instead of, though, it'll never happen to me. Oh, that's not going to happen to me. Or that always happens to me. Yeah, I don't know what that is. You know, it's like, and then we wonder how we get in our own way.
Well, it's also, this is a little different step here, but when you're consciously aware, you're just as joyous for the other guy's win as you are for your own.
Yeah.
There's no sense of I'm doing without because they got it. What there is abundance universally, nothing missing anywhere ever.
Right.
And you can enjoy it rather than be a hermit and want to clutch it all to yourself and not give any away.
Right. Yeah. My question is, can you go from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm?
How much enthusiasm have I got with failure right at the beginning?
Exactly. I mean, you know, if we just look at it, if you set yourself up for a transformation and you're like, okay, I'm going to reinvent, here's my vision. And what do you think you're going to be met with? You're going to have all kinds of things that are going to challenge your notion of who you know yourself to be. And it's not going to necessarily look easy. It's not going to necessarily be a greased skid. But
if it's true transformation, it'll find me saying, what have you done with Kim?
Right. Like, okay.
I knew isn't there anymore.
Yeah. And the truth is that that's always what's unfolding.
That's right.
But it's because it's like my relationship with my Betty.
Yep.
is different than your relationship with Betty, is different than anyone's relationship. You get what I'm saying? It's like, because it's my living of you.
Something going on, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else you want to say about that? It says the only other thing here, I'll just go into this, is nothing can give a greater sense of joy and fulfillment humanly, more surprises, more fun than being man. The conscious recognition that life lives in all its fullness as individual awareness or mind. And what you need in the human sense of things for the identity of good, capital G, is determined by the clarity of your vision.
Yep. Isn't that a good sentence?
Yeah. And that's from Laird, All is One, on page 4, on pages 4 through 12.
All of that, yeah.
Okay.
You skipped one. You skipped the thing that says the way you see occurrences of daily life does not change the fact that good is what is being and what you're experiencing the livelong day. When you give up, quit taking thought to be the thinking, acknowledging the infinity of good. When you have no opinions, theories, or deciding what is good, either for yourself or for another, a wonderful thing happens. Good evolves a new point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole, and I know it's like magic, and that's what we call miracles.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the space of them.
Yep.
Very fun. Fun stuff. All right. Now, I want to welcome everyone here. And if you have any questions as we go along, I want you to enter them into the comments, and know that there's a little bit of a delay, but we'll bring every single one of them up. We would love your comments. We would love your hearts and your likes and your thumbs up if you're enjoying this conversation. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel also, because it helps us get more views and spread the word.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump in. Okay, so All is One on page 2. Margaret Laird wrote, all is mind, all is one. Whether you see it as the destruction of the human race or its preservation, what you are seeing is always preservation, never destruction.
Yep. You know why that is? It depends on what you're believing.
Okay.
We talk about destruction and preservation. And one way you'll see it as destruction, another way you'll see it as preservation. The only discriminating difference is what you're believing, because perfection's the only thing present, and always you're looking at things from your point of view. You're seeing it the only way you can see it, but you need to be aware that it is perfection you're exploring, seen in this limited view.
And when I'm clear about that it's perfection that I see, and this is my view of it, I have clear vision. I'm clear. That's clarity.
Yeah, well, what it is when that occurs, Kim, you're not a little me coming to terms with something. When that's going on, it's because you have dropped the Kim and you're just present.
Yeah.
So it's never personal. And and you catch it because it's the time when you're not personal and you're free as a breeze.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, perfection underlies reality. Without perfection, nothing is wholly real. It's exactly what you just said.
Just a minute. Hold it.
You're Jessica?
Pardon?
I'm sorry,
I'm on the live cast. I can't talk with you right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have no idea who that was.
Who just walked into your house?
Well, I have the front door open for the breeze.
Oh.
And they just.
All right. Okay, well, on we go. Who knows?
Life is full of surprises.
So perfection underlies reality, and without perfection, nothing is wholly real.
That's right. So it's always a point of view of perfection, but certainly not wholly real as long as it's a belief system.
Right. Okay. And then Mary Baker Eddy also said the Christianly scientific real is a sensuous unreal.
That's right. You see, there aren't two worlds. There's just one thing going on. Your point of view gives you the way you live it. Your willingness to look beyond your present point of view is your pathway to freedom.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep. But it's always divine mind being all in all. That one presence constitutes who you are and who the world you walk through is and who is, because that's who it is. It's one mind being itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. And then in Mind is the Athlete on page 184, you wrote, every phenomenal thing present points to being seen the only way it can be seen.
Yep.
So that's just 3 ways that we've said the same thing. We have a limited view and we're seeing whatever we see the only way we can see it right now.
Yep. And the limited view is a belief system you have with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because the view is not limited.
Right. So is the limited view, would you call that smudged or clear?
If I think the way I see it is the way it is, it's a very limited view.
That would be smudged.
If I can recognize that an infinite intelligence functioning is what has my world occur just like this, then there's some freedom.
Right. And that would be clear. That would be clarity.
Yep.
Okay. So there's a distinction, smudged or clear. All right. We like that. Hence the title. Okay. On we go. On page 14, and all is one, Margaret Laird.
Where are you?
Right. I'm on the next quote.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All is one on page 14. Margaret Laird wrote, the concept of man is as physical as a personal me cannot bridge the gulf that exists between itself and man made by good deeds, kind thoughts, etc. That is, student actively living science.
Mm-hmm.
Say more about that. I think it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the concept of man as a physical being, 2 arms, 2 legs, head and a neck.
Okay.
You know, what I see in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
that concept, it doesn't bridge the gulf that exists between itself and the perfection present. So as long as I cling to the way it looks, to the way I see it, to the way it gets viewed in my everyday living,
Yeah.
you know, like a house and a car, and here's this. As long as it's viewed that way, there's no gulf. I mean, there's no bridge to the gulf. There's
Okay.
a huge gulf between that and what's actually present.
Okay.
And most of the time we see that. We just see what we're looking at and we go on until
Right.
something stops us and we have to think a different path. And
Right.
sometimes a little increment of inspiration is enough to just move you along. But believe me, all of our human living is a self-discovering moment.
Right.
And if you're not discovering something new and bigger or larger or huger or whatever the word is than anything you've got going on at the moment, if you're not actively looking for what next, how can I fix, how can I change, how can
Right.
I move, how can I expand, all that, you're stuck. But as long as you can let it go, not have it an attachment to it, you'll keep shifting it around and it'll do what it needs to do to move you right along.
Mm-hmm.
But then you'll come up and say, oh, I kind of like that over there. I want to go over there. That's a detour. happens all the time. But if you're alert and you're really on a roll, you don't let that detour work. You just say, staying right here.
Okay. All right. And in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, science makes no concessions to persons or opinions. So long as matter is the basis of practice, illness cannot be efficaciously treated by the metaphysical process. Truth does the work.
Yep.
So as long as you're attributing cause to matter, that's when that efficacious word comes in.
Yeah, that was a good word. But yeah, science doesn't make any concessions to anything, because with science, there isn't anything else. What would there be to make a concession to if all is infinite mind? And that's what's present.
Right.
There's nothing to concede.
Right.
Just one thing going on, perfection present, looking however it looks, and on we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then in your book on page 184, you wrote, and it's the wrong page, so note that I said 125, it's really 184, where Betty wrote, we live in terms of our perception of what's present.
Exactly.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
Our perception pretty much rules our experience.
Yep.
And as long as we have a smudged perception rather than the clear vision,
Yep.
we go right down the primrose path to you know where.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, as long as we're attached to the significance of human living, there's nothing significant about it. But we get attached to the way we're used to doing things. I've had a lot of experience in the last couple of weeks with it not being done the way I've always done it. And what that is to confront. And what I discovered is that it seems to take me a lot more time to figure out what I'm going to do here now if I'm not doing the same thing I did yesterday.
Right. Right. You got to consider what might be possible.
Yeah. So we actually do live in terms of our own perception of what's present.
Right.
And if I see a problem is present, I'm going to be a little less enthusiastic about my participation in that moment, you know?
Right.
If I can see that God being, the God idea in action, is all that can possibly be going on, nothing's going to stop me from participating.
Right. Right.
And if you're not participating, you're a lost cause.
Right. Perception is the key to clear vision.
Yeah. Perception is reception.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And incidentally, when you look at something from the standpoint of your ground of perception, you're the only one that limits it in any way. Nobody else can stop perception. When it's clear, it leads the field.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's clear, you usually are right there with it because you see it. Oh,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went on to write, hence the desirability of expanding our ground of perception beyond our current human perception.
Yeah. The ground of perception is sort of funded out of understanding. And understanding is what expands your ground of perception.
Yeah.
When I understand that 2 and 2 is 4, the ground of perception in mathematics, it's a big jump. Just learning that. So learning the facts of a science is what expands everything for you.
Right.
So you want to really be asking yourself questions. Oh, what's this? What's going on here? Oh, that's interesting. Just to as you said, curiosity.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
have it go along with everything that you're doing, because
Yeah.
it's so easy. It's so easy to fall back into the Betty that you were yesterday and the day before that and last year and 5 years ago. And the Betty that you anticipate will be present tomorrow. Because none of that's real. The only thing that's real is Betty now.
right.
And Betty now is a point of view of divine being, whole, perfect, complete. So, okay, on we go.
Right. What I was kind of thinking about as you said that was there's what we think we know, and this whole story about when you're a kid you think you know everything,
You're
and
positive you know everything.
and you grow up, you're clear that you know everything about everything as you get into your teens and this and that, and then you're in college and that, and as you start to dive into subjects and really become an expert in that subject, you realize the vastness of that which you don't know in that subject. So,
Which points you in the direction of how much you really don't know.
right. But you start to consider, well, maybe I don't know all this. And then you start to explore that. And it's all the curiosity. And pretty soon you become comfortable with a certain body of knowledge. And then you think you know it all again. And that's expert mind. And you rob yourself of the curiosity or the beginner's mind that has you be willing to explore it all like it's new. I remember when we were exploring play. Remember that years ago, we were exploring play, and yet they'd get us down on the floor and look up under the table and be a wonder about what we saw up under the table, how it was constructed under there, and stuff like just to change your point of view. Like when you get in the shower, how many people get into the shower the exact same way every time, and you back into the water and then you put your head back and you get it wet. However you do that, whatever you do probably the same way every time you get in. Switch it up. Take a different route to when you drive somewhere and you're always going that there, like to work or whatever, when we used to all drive into work for a job, and take a different one. Start to vary those, what we could call habits or automaticities in our life, and start to play with it and see what opens up. And it was all a matter of kind of digging into some of that automaticity or that always way of doing something that you get trapped into, where you lose that sense of wonder, or that sense of play, or that sense of curiosity entirely.
As you were talking, I was thinking about this phrase, and a little child shall lead them. Children do not have a history behind every single thing they're doing. They're in the process of setting that all up. And they could just drop one thing and go right over here and play with something else and forget about that.
Right.
And then go over here and play with something else and just leave a whole path of the stuff they've dropped as they go. Well, the things that you don't recognize for yourself are the things you're dropping as you go, because there's no joy to see it disappear. And when you're really being yourself, there's a great joy to let it all go.
Right.
And to be willing to be new, fresh, right now, present.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, our last set. Here we go. Margaret wrote on page 15, you cannot talk yourself into forgetting any concept you hold to as a happening, nor is time a factor in the forgetting. Over time, I'll let it go. Over time, I'll forget.
Yeah, and I think of that time as a healer. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
Time is a point of view on now. Yeah.
Right. You forget only as you be man, acknowledging the infinity of good.
Yeah, and the forgetting is actually not the static experience of something that you're now dropping. It's more like transforming as you go. Your whole world shifts. Everything fits into what you're presently up to.
Right.
So when you're standing by with perfection as the ground of being, with mind is the source and condition of everything to do with whatever I'm up to, even with my belief that I'm Betty.
Right.
All of that, there's an infinite intelligence functioning. And questioning that or backing away from it or not acknowledging it actually kind of digs a hole for you, because it is the acknowledgement of the spiritual fact of yourself that moves you beyond your present situation.
Right.
And as you begin to see yourself infinitely good, a lot of stuff begins to show up. You say, oh, that doesn't fit. What am I hanging on to that for?
Right.
You know? And it frees you up to be a new beginning, a new moment of right now, right now, right now. And then you can let it go, because in the right now, there's no need for memory. There's just now.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. And then in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy said on page 457, one cannot scatter his fire and at the same time hit the mark.
Yep, for sure.
Right. Okay. You want to say anything about that?
Well, I could, but I don't need to. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And then in Mind is the Athlete, you say we must attend to designing the world we walk through by responsibly living the facts of being fundamental to our own existence and our world.
Yeah. You know,
Go ahead.
listening to Margaret's tape, and she talks about how much she enjoyed listening to, who is the evangelist? Billy
I don't
Graham.
know, but stop moving your computer.
Thank you. Anyway, she would talk about her world around her, actually, and the ideas that she would see in whatever was going on. And what I really wanted to say is, when you can look at everything going on as the world that you're building out of who you're being right this minute and what your perceptions are right this minute, if you can see that, then you have no problem being responsible for the world you walk through.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you can be responsible, you have no way to move along the path, because there isn't anyone out there to attach that responsibility to. But the belief that there is will rob you of your freedom. So you want to take on the responsibility for being yourself. And who is that self? And what is that self? And it's not personal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then we'll end with acknowledgement and willingness to have formless, limitless being be the only source are the requisites for that expansion.
Yep.
All right. Well, there being no other comments or questions brought before us today, that's all we've got today. So what would you say is the thing people should pay attention to between now and 2 weeks from now when we have our next live stream?
We're on the road next week, so we won't be present.
That's why I said 2 weeks from now.
That's right. So I was just clarifying that.
Yeah.
The clarity of your vision has nothing to do with everything surrounding you. It only has to do with you being yourself present now. Wondering what's going to affect somebody else, wondering if they're going to agree with you, wondering if it's a smart decision to do this, wondering if I should be involved in that. Oh, but I would prefer, and then leaning into my preferences. all of that stuff is a detour from living yourself whole, present, perfect now.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So we'll see you in 2 weeks from today at 5 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And until then, we have lots of videos in here, over 130 videos. If you haven't watched all 130, you can go check some out that you've never seen, or you can rewatch this one. Whichever floats your boat, that's what you could do next week. All right. Until then, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care, live the science, have clear vision. All righty. See you later.
Bye-bye.